Good Monday morning, everybody. I am Angie Callen, your host of No More Mondays, the podcast where we believe you can have a thriving career or business and an amazing life on your terms. And I have the privilege of bringing you amazing people who are doing just that, but are also coming with stories and strategies to help you live and work more authentically. And today's guest knows a thing or two about workplace culture and happiness because she has spent almost 30 years in the trenches of human resources, God bless her, helping people and businesses do more than just make it through and survive, but thrive. Renee Marchak is the founder of Level Up Career Coaching and the creator of the Change Makers Circle, where she has collected a group of peer HR people who are like-minded and doing the same thing, all out with the mission of transforming employee engagement and the employee experience so that we can ditch the whole checkbox requirement and actually adopt this as a culture and business driver. In case you haven't noticed, Renee and I share a lot of the same MO, help people be happy at work and in life. And so that's what we're going to chat about today, deep diving into Renee's 11 engagement drivers that she's identified through all of her experience and experimentation in the HR space. If you've ever asked yourself, why don't I love my job the way that I used to? Or why is this place sucking the life out of me when on paper it was great? We're about to give you some answers. So without further ado, Renee, welcome to No More Mondays.
Thank you. That was a lovely intro. I really appreciate that. I think you captured everything that I probably could have said about myself, but better. And
Yay!
I'm so happy to be here. After talking with you, our initial call, I felt like we had the same energy and just like you said, just that passion for making work better. So yes, I could talk about culture and workplace happiness all day long. I would love to take credit for these engagement drivers, but I can't. I had this phenomenal manager at my last job. Her name is Kaylee Garm. There, I said it out loud. She'll probably kill me. But she was tasked. She was my manager, and she was tasked with leveling up the engagement of the company. We were starting to go through some transitions. We knew there would be some rocky moments, and it was really important to get to the heart of not just like the 5 pillars of what people think culture is. Oh, it's professional growth and a good relationship with your manager. And it is those things, but it's so much more. And when she brought me into the fold of this initiative, I fell in love. I could have done it. That could be all I do for the rest of my life, and I'd be so happy. So taking the foundation that she created, I broke it down a little bit more. And I call it the 11 engagement drivers for employee happiness. I wish I could have kept it at 10. It's like a nice round number, but to me, there's 11.
Actually, people love the odd numbers, but I have to tell you what's funny about this, and I might have mentioned this to you. Last summer, I did a keynote on leading during the age of AI. And one of the things that I found in my research was an article from, I can't remember the source, about the 10 let's say metrics or benchmarks that the company that had conducted this research found to indicate work-life satisfaction, fulfillment, employee engagement, whatever you want to call it. So when, Renee and I first chatted and she said, I have these 11 engagement drivers, I was like, wait, we got to talk about this because we probably have a similar 10. But I think that what's really important is like the 7 through 11 at the bottom of the list that people don't really give enough credit to, that kind of level of satisfaction. And that's probably where the magic is.
100%. And the reason there are 11 is because what's important to me, what matters to me, and what drives me at work can be very different from what drives you. So what I do is I encourage my clients, whether it's people I'm career coaching or the people I'm consulting in organizations, is to encourage their people to identify the top 3 engagement drivers. So the way we define these drivers is they are the key factors or elements within an organization that significantly influence the employee's level of engagement, the employee's level of motivation, and the commitment to their work. Because kind of like dating, not that I would know, I've been married for 26 years, but
it's okay. I use dating analogies all the time in all aspects of career. And I'm like, I talk about applying to jobs like swiping on apps that I luckily have never had to have on my phone. So I feel you. However, there are a lot of similarities. And I actually want to tell everyone what the 11 drivers are. So, tell us your dating analogy, and then we'll actually run through them all.
Absolutely. It's a good segue into that anyway. The dating analogy is you go on, I don't know what it is, Tinder or whatever, and you're seeing all like these cute, potential suitors. Oh God, I sound so old saying that. But, they're, in my case, like if I were to be looking for a man, he would, if he was handsome, he was polished, he said all the right things, he was funny. And it's just like, you meet, you're thinking the stars align. Like I have a Nicholas Sparks novel in my mind. I see the kids in the future and I see we're just going to live happily ever after. And it just seems so perfect. And then 3 weeks later, 6 weeks later, maybe 3 months later, it's like, you're looking at this person. It's like, what did I ever see in you? And
the young kids, the kids to this day call it the ick, right? It sets in.
Either they only talk about themselves or they really don't have a sense of humor, whatever the case may be. But it's the same thing when people look for jobs, right? They see this job description, they're looking at the role, they're like, oh, this is super cool. I've done this, or this is something I want to do. And everything looks good on paper. But what they're not doing is acknowledging or trying to determine if the values that this company stands by align with their own. And does the company support the type of work environment where this person will thrive? And that is the big disconnect. So it's how do you identify what those are? You think about just the simple things that you need in life, the hierarchy of needs. You have your foundation and you need the shelter and you need the psychological support, and it goes up. This is kind of similar. But the reason why these engagement drivers matter, and we'll go into them, is that they play such a crucial role in shaping the overall employee experience. And they impact factors like productivity, retention, overall organizational success. And these have such an impact on the bottom line. And one of the hardest things to get leadership on board with is what that looks like, how you make that dotted line to business goals. But that's where people analytics comes in. So I can go over the engagement drivers if you like.
I want to hear it. And also I want us to, I'm going to get on our soapbox that we share together. And that is that I'm so glad that if you are a leader, please listen, because we are not just screaming into a useless void because we want people to be happy at work. It actually has an ROI for you. And while you may, people analytics can show you the metrics, but there's also tons of qualitative stuff around that. We're going to get into it in a minute, but I love the idea of like that values alignment and being not only a place people want to work, but it fuels them in the right way. Because, in addition to that list of 10 I found, years ago, I wrote an article about what does career growth mean to you? Because in corporate America, we have defined one pathway: climb a ladder, get more titles, take more responsibilities, and you'll make more money. But there's a myriad of different ways to grow. And that's really what we're leaning into here with this idea of there's 11 drivers, and not because every individual has or prioritizes all 11, but because we need different drivers to appeal to the idiosyncrasies and the individualization of, various employees and teams. So now we get to hear what they are. Yeah. Give them to me.
So this is a very common one. I refer to it as recognition and rewards. If you were looking at an engagement survey, an employee engagement survey, and you had to say how much you agree with this statement on a scale of 1 to 5, and the definition as it pertains to this particular engagement driver is employees feel valued and motivated because their contributions are recognized and appreciated, not just by leaders, but by their colleagues. And that's one engagement driver. So if you were to look at an engagement survey, you would say, well, how, and you're sitting in your office and you're like, well, do I really feel this way? Like, do I feel valued? Do I feel motivated? and then you assess it. The next one, this is my number one, trust in manager.
That's a lot of people's number one, Renee.
You'll see a lot of these overlap.
Based on exit surveys where over 50% of people say they're leaving because of a manager, that's a hot one.
100%. A lot of these overlap. And I have just found that if I have trust in my manager, a lot of these actually just fall into place.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So trust in manager, it's the ideal state of excellence is as an employee, you believe that your manager is available to you, that they're invested in your overall well-being and professional growth. So to your point, people don't leave jobs, they leave managers.
They leave people. Yeah.
So the next one is physical work environment. And that's exactly what it means. It's like, whether you're working remotely, whether you're working on site, are you comfortable in your surroundings? Are you safe? Do you feel physically and emotional? Well, emotional is another engagement driver, but do you feel physically safe? Is your chair like ergonomically suited for you? But in addition to that, do you have all the tools and resources necessary for you to basically be set up for success? Because one of the biggest pains, and I did a lot of onboarding in my time, is when you have a new hire come on board and their computer won't turn on, or they're trying to get access to something and they can't find it and they've got to go through all these different channels. It's like,
yep.
That's what I mean. Like, that's part of your physical work environment. Do you have everything that you need, whether it's a good chair and desk or access to resources and tools? You have everything you need to do your job.
Yeah, don't overlook giving somebody a working laptop on day one, especially if they're remote, because otherwise you just made their first day pretty miserable. And I've seen it happen.
Oh my gosh, that is the hill I'll die on. I worked for a company where we were transitioning after an M&A, and I oversaw the onboarding, I had to transition everything over to what the new company was doing. I cannot tell you how many times I got calls at like the 11th hour from new hires saying, I still haven't received my laptop, and they're supposed to go through orientation the next day. So it takes a lot of finessing and some serious collaboration across departments to make sure everything is in place. But we got
those small things can go a long way to making somebody feel like you thought ahead a little bit. And I think that's a lot of these, some of these are obvious, right? Making sure that we're rewarding people in the way that they want or are motivated to be rewarded. The trust in manager, which I'm guessing is probably the most common top one. But don't overlook the fact that having a space, if somebody's coming to a physical office, having their space set up and the good old cubicle ready for them makes them feel like you thought ahead and that they're wanted. And that can create a really, really great foundation. Okay, so what's our fourth one?
So the fourth one is psychological safety. This is, again, I call it the end state of excellence. Employees should feel safe bringing their authentic selves to work without fear of judgment, because the organization is committed to driving inclusivity and a sense of belonging. And this includes DEI, this includes employee resource groups. But it's also like, can I come to work, whether it's remote or on site, and feel like I'm wanted there? Are you listening to my opinions? Are you really collaborating with me? Are you bringing me into the fold? Because I've been the victim of this and I've seen others be the victim of this. You come into an environment where it could be rather competitive, or people see you as a threat and they just want to shun you out for no other reason than
you exist.
So
I experienced this when I was an engineer. Am I going to go to work and be beat up by my manager today for nothing other than the fact that I wasn't at my desk at 7 a.m., even though I was there at 9 p.m. And I think there's a close link to, you could think about this of like the appreciation, I think is a very fundamental aspect of psychological safety that you have to be careful not to conflate with the reward and recognition piece, because somebody feeling appreciated is different than saying, hey, I'm recognizing you for a contribution. And if you, for instance, don't give them a voice, or if they speak up, you step all over it, they're going to shrink, and then they're not going to perform and be productive. And that's a negative. Not only are you not leveraging the advantages of thinking about this, you're now creating a negative action and likely departure on their end.
100%. And we're going to talk about employee voice is actually one of the drivers. So we're going to talk about that as well. But yeah, and you'll see like these definitely overlap and they all play into each other. So the next one is confidence in leadership. Not to be confused with confidence in your manager. This is confidence in the executive leadership team's ability to provide strategic direction, navigate challenges, and make decisions at the broader level in the best interest of the organization. And the analogy I use, and I know this is not going to sound great, but the analogy I use is the parent-child relationship. Your child needs structure and barriers
and boundaries and discipline.
Exactly. And trust that your parents are going to hold your hand when you cross the street. They're going to make sure that when they're driving you to school, you have everything that you need, like it's all set up. And when the big scary like questions come, they can navigate it because that's why they're in that position. Same thing with leadership. Gosh, there's so much I could say about this, but having that confidence that they're going to be transparent, not that means that they have to tell you everything, but even just be transparent enough to say, I don't have the answer, but I'll get back to you.
Or that there's some like connection, right? I work like, even if you are a new grad working at let's just call it the bottom, doing that in a vacuum does not typically build a sense of loyalty and connection to the bigger picture. I have lots of lessons for being an engineer on what are not the 11 engagement drivers. And I still remember my very first engineering job. It was like, hey, go design these 7 parking lots. And they were part of this it was part of the Charlotte light rail system, you guys. I designed the parking lots at the Charlotte light rail system. I didn't even know that's what it was because I had no connection to the bigger project vision, like let alone the company at the company level. And so feeling like there's visibility, I think is kind of part of this invoking confidence in a bigger direction, because we've all heard that person who comes to us and says, I don't think I like the direction the company's going.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah. And also this is where engagement surveys come in. This is another hill I'll die on. You have your confidence in leadership comes also from when you do share feedback, they are going to act on it if it's within reason. And when you're continuing to give people these engagement surveys to fill out, or you're doing these focus groups or whatever it is, and you don't do anything about it, they start losing trust in leadership really fast. And I've seen this so many times. And people talk about like survey fatigue. And I heard someone say, no, there's no such thing as survey fatigue. They're just fatigued from doing these things and not seeing anything
with
different.
no results from them.
Exactly.
I think this is very similar to it's a walk the walk, talk the talk thing. Just like we see companies that have totally empty values listed on a website. Where do those actually show up in the day? Or are you throwing them on a website as a marketing tool? This is another checkbox. Like, yep, we're doing employment surveys because that's what we're supposed to do. Right. But there's no intention from the get-go to even leverage anything that comes out of it, which goes back to, again, an overlap with the voice, right? You're asking people for feedback that you have no intention, and they know through your actions are never going to go anywhere or do anything. So what's the point?
What's the point? You brought up a really good thing that I want to just expand upon. You talked about the core values. The other thing about core values, and you're right, if it's just writing on a wall and it's not being modeled, then
that's writing on the wall.
But you need to leadership. It needs to start at the top, and that's where. And now, granted, culture is everybody's responsibility, but the leaders need to model the behavior that represent their core values in order to get everybody on the same page. And that's truly how you build a culture. So
Because if you don't have that, let's say top down, bottom up cultural alignment, somewhere in the middle, you're going to get the rub. And guess who that poor soul is? The good old middle manager whose life sucks right now, or HR who's got to hear about it. Because you're at the point of having to take the friction between the two and deflect it and figure out what to do with it. Don't create that kind of resistance. It's very easy. It's easier to avoid it than we all think. Okay, what number are we on? We're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, where are we? So we're in confidence and leadership.
Yeah, we just that one. That one is a whole episode, by the way. The confidence and leadership and strategic direction.
I have little notes here. I just want to make sure I'm following the right order. Okay, autonomy and freedom to innovate. This is one of my top 3. This is when, again, ideal state of existence. Employees are empowered to make decisions and have the freedom to be creative and innovative in their work. This is so important to me. And it's because I have worked for several organizations where I didn't have a big budget to work with. And so I worked very grassroots, and I actually loved it. I loved it because I was able to obviously exercise innovation and creativity and really see things through and execute in the manner that really showed my strengths. And that was my number one for a while, until I was watching my relationship build with my former manager, Kaylee, who's actually a dear friend of mine now. And I realized that the reason why trusted manager became number one is because she gave me that autonomy and the freedom to innovate.
And how closely linked are those? Also very evident in the fact that you became an entrepreneur, where you have creativity, freedom, and autonomy, and the ability to use it to innovate. Side note, newsflash for anybody out there thinking about it. But isn't that interesting how almost two sides of the same coin became so obvious? It helped you realize one of your top drivers.
Exactly. So yeah, this is a huge one for me. It is what I love doing the most about my job, and I can pivot the way I want. But when managers, and it has to come from the managers, when they truly believe in their team members as the subject matter experts in whatever their vertical is, and they give them that autonomy and they give them that trust, the rewards are tenfold. I mean, you come to work and you're excited to be there. I mean, this one's a big one for me.
Yeah. And I don't know why you as a leader, you out there, the royal you listening, don't want to be surrounded by happy workers, right? It just seems so bass backwards in so many ways. And that's where we get back into like those ROI and metrics and business drivers that this stuff really does, because like you said, productivity, retention. I feel like the number one thing people don't realize is how expensive it is just for turnover alone, 100%. Let alone the other things that you gain. And you never know if that autonomous person will create and innovate the company's next big thing. Give them space and freedom to do it. Okay, what's next?
Or fail forward. I love that too. Like, yes, give them the autonomy to make mistakes and not punish them for it.
Normalize failure as a certainty of innovation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Before we move on to the next one, I do want to add one more thing about this. When I knew I had the autonomy and freedom to innovate is when Kaylee said to me, and it was early on in our relationship, she asked me what my goals were, and I told her. And I said, well, what are your goals? She said, my goal is to make sure I am giving you work where you can shine. I was like,
love you, Kaylee.
I love you, Kaylee.
Poster child of what management should look like, right there.
when she's listening, she's gonna be like, I'm gonna kill her.
We're gonna tag the crap out of you so that you're embarrassed and humbled by the impact and legacy that you are leaving. Love it so much.
All right. Next one is employee voice. So this is where employees are not just encouraged to voice their opinions, because every company says, oh yeah, we want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your concerns, but they are also, again, feeling seen and heard and understood, because whoever it is that's listening, and hopefully it starts with their manager, is taking this into consideration, whether it's a direction where of how work is going. Kaylee would sit down with me once a month and say, we're having an engagement meeting and I want to know what I can do to better support you. So
there you go. There's your magic question in your pocket. Anyone who leads a team right there. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. Really the big message here, in my opinion, is don't say you give employees a voice if you do not have ears to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. Again, because then it falls flat. It totally falls flat. And that's where employees lose trust.
Yep.
So the next one is camaraderie with coworkers. This is when employees show genuine interest in the lives of their coworkers and enjoy spending time together. Two of my closest friends today are from my last job, Kaylee and Juliana. Juliana's coming to see me I live in North Carolina now, but Juliana's visiting me next week. And
love it.
People are like, oh, you don't have to be friends with your coworkers. I'm like, really? Because we spend more time with our coworkers
and your family. And you don't have to fall into that whole, you don't have to fall into that, like the culture is we're a family, because that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But if you're not friendly with your coworkers, you are likely not working in a place where you're equally yoked with them and sharing values. Because when that happens, you're going to naturally build rapport and relationships because you're all on the same page. And so if that's missing, it's a sign of misalignment, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And, these are the people that when I am taking a vacation, they care enough about my well-being that they're going to pick up some of the load.
They cover your back. Yeah.
My back. Yep. They're my ride or die.
Yep. I got a couple of those I met through coaching. They're pretty awesome. High market stuff. Also coming to visit / house sit. Gotta love that.
Love it.
Okay. What's after camaraderie with coworkers?
Meaningful work. So this is an interesting one. It's kind of twofold. Yes. It sounds like it can be, if you're doing something that you are feeling really fulfilled about, it resonates with your heart. Maybe it's nonprofit work. Yes, that's absolutely valid. But what this specifically means is that employees understand the purpose of their work and see how their contributions align with the organization's missions and goals and impact overall success. Nothing more frustrating than doing work and having no idea how it's impacting the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And leaders, if you're listening, one of the greatest things that you could do for your team members is to be able to show them that dotted line. Hey, the work that you're doing, let me show you like the trajectory of the impact it is making.
Mm-hmm. And to bring this full circle, by the way, the intertwinedness of all of these, you cannot support meaningful work where employees understand the purpose of how their work contributes to the bigger picture if you have not communicated it and built confidence in that leadership and the strategic direction.
100%. Yep. Again, it all overlaps. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And I think if you have a really good leader, a really good manager who truly believes in this, in the work that we're doing here, this is all going to be almost seamless for them because they're going to hire people who also are champions of this work.
Yeah.
And people are going to have, people use the word like-minded, and I guess it can be taken the wrong way. But when I think about like-minded, I think we share the same values. And when you're hiring people who really share the same values and will demonstrate those values, like this all falls into line.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're hiring and there's a misalignment, that's where it could get really tricky. So so that is meaningful work. And then employee well-being. Now, I really think if an employee is feeling truly cared for, all of these engagement drivers are falling in line. But specifically, this is when an employee feels genuinely cared for and motivated to perform at their best, because the organization really prioritizes their well-being. They offer meaningful support, whether it's their physical or emotional health, having those EAPs. But more than that, I even put employee resource groups under employee well-being. Let's
Agreed.
give people community. Let's give people community where they feel that level of support. Something, again, it's something as simple as I'm going on vacation. Well, there's a rule in this company. We do not bother you when you are on vacation.
Yes. Letting people actually have PTO and take it as legit time off, to me, is the, let's say, poster child of this this bullet point. But again, as we think about how you're totally right in that there is kind of an order of these, because if you get physical and psychological safety right, there's a very good chance you are hitting the mark or 90% there on employee well-being. So they really do kind of build. And if you're paying attention to one, it stacks and ends up culminating into, firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. Agreed. And then the final one is professional growth and development. I love that what you called out in the beginning, like growth is not necessarily linear. Professional growth and development, if you have a company that's truly invested in it, they are committed to the employee's long-term success. They will foster a culture. Oh, wow, my New York accent just came out. Well, they will foster a culture.
We got another Syracuse part of the family here, everyone who is in the Callan family in Syracuse.
Oh, funny. They will foster a culture of continuous learning and development, career advancement, and personal growth. But here's something that I have found, and I am finding that more leaders are getting on board with this. Not every, to your point, like not everybody's going to grow up into people management per se.
Yep. And certainly not everyone should.
No. But that doesn't mean that they don't deserve a path to grow in. They can grow out. It's investing in their professional development, getting them to certifications, getting them to conferences, but also they can advance as subject matter experts, as architects. They may not want to be a people manager, and maybe they don't have the skills to be a people manager, but that shouldn't be a requirement to grow in a company.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, generally speaking, corporate culture, the corporate culture, not a corporate culture, has defined it as such. I have very, very happily seen some companies who are starting to create, let's say, that technical or that subject matter growth ladder, because that's where, for some reason, so much of my engineering career comes into like, here, because that's where I first realized how forced career growth can be in that one singular trajectory on somebody like an engineer who doesn't have or want to really gain, let alone use the skills it takes to lead people, but they might love managing more complex projects or doing research or getting more into academia. And that's, to bring this like all full circle, that was that article I wrote, is that there's like 7 different ways to grow in your career outside of titles and money. And some of them are even in these engagement drivers, like meaningful work is a way people may want to grow in their career to get to the point where they're working in an environment, nonprofit or for-profit, where they care about the end deliverable. Or some people really want to work in a place where they love their coworkers, and that is the type of growth they want. Others want to work in a culture that's aligned. So I find it really interesting that the 10 drivers before this are also kind of synonymous with the different professional growth triggers people may want, because if we're aligning the way people grow with the way they want, they're satisfied and engaged.
And that's, I think if you can really identify what your top 3 engagement drivers are, or if you are a manager and take the time to sit down with your employees, I also call it finding your love language at work.
Yeah.
You ever hear of the 5 love languages?
We have we all know the book, The 5 Love Languages, except for that you can't have touch be one of your love languages at work, people. Let's just lay that out right here.
I know. Physical touch, no.
One.
I heard someone referred to HR as the no touchy department.
You're at a good point. So let's let's take all these and that we package them up in a little bow. You can get these through Renee, by the way. And we'll talk more about how you find her in a second. But let's say somebody out there is like thinking, they're like, ooh, I'm either not in a place I want to be, or I'm a leader. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think my team is checking half of these boxes. Where can a leader start with beginning to kind of work through and evaluate where they stand in these drivers?
Talk to your team. Get those one-on-ones. Communicate. It's not there's these great frameworks and assessments, and you can do all of that, right? But if you're not communicating with them, if you're not just asking the difficult questions, and when I say difficult, it means what they say may reflect poorly on you initially, but when you have that information, you'll know how to best support them. Everyone's different. And that's what these, for managers, it's so important to know what these are so that you know how to best support your employees. The very first leadership training I ever went to was like 10, 15 years ago. And I remember the facilitator asked, what is the most important thing a manager can do for their team? And people raised their hands and they were all right questions, support them, train them, listen to them. It was all valid. And at the end, he goes, it's really simple. It's to make sure your team is okay, period. End of story. Whatever that looks like, whatever that sounds like, but it's also different for every person. I'll add this one thing to it as well. A great training that I recommend for leaders is situational leadership. It's Ken Blanchard's, the 4 development levels. And because it really tailors the way you support, the level of support you give a team member based on their development level for a particular project, not who they are overall. And so it's about meeting them where they're at.
Yes.
I love it.
I love meeting where they're at. So I have kind of a loaded question that could open up a giant can of worms, but I'm really genuinely curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I'll clearly have opinions on why do you think this whole conversation that we have just spent the last 36 minutes and 30 seconds having is so critical in this moment in corporate culture?
Whew.
Told you it was loaded.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, we are a country that is very much divided. Obviously from a political standpoint, and then the politics that impact the economy or, particular organizations. We have to have a place where employees feel safe to come during the day.
Yeah.
Or if it's at night, if they work at night. It has to be a safe zone. It has to be the anchor, right? Where we can put all of that aside because it's like, all right, I don't have to ride the waves when I'm at work. I can just be focused and I have an anchor there. No matter what the rest of the world is doing, I know what I'm doing day in and day out. I know what to expect. I know who I'm working with. It's having that consistency and the shared values.
Yeah. I think that that's really important. And I'll add one extra piece is that within the divide that we're seeing, we also are at a point of a shift in, I don't want to say corporate culture, because that's a misnomer to everything else we've talked about, but the workforce is shifting due to the generations coming and going and the amount of young people coming into it and how they want to work versus how we have traditionally worked. And there's a big divide there as well. And so I think that there's this real need to bridge the gap on all facets so that work does become that safe place of consistency, which will lend its way to satisfaction, which is what younger people are demanding.
That is such a great call out. In the last Changemakers Circle, I had a consultant in there. Her name's Cheryl Lamaglio, and she won't mind that I say that. We
have so many people to tag.
I know. She is really a subject matter expert on the generational differences within a workforce and how whatever it is we're talking about with regards to culture and these engagement drivers, she was so astutely able to connect them with the generations. Well, that would really resonate with Gen X, or which I'm Gen X, but my God, we still have baby boomers in the workforce that are just like my uncle is in his 70s and he just retired. He just want to work. The longer people are living longer. So
and that's going to be a trend that we're going to generally have more workforces and more generations in the workforce and a wider age gap, because pensions are gone. When we're living longer, people are going to have to and choose to work into. So I feel like having 5 generations in the workforce, we might, that might be normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Listen, when I graduated college in the early 90s, I was raised by baby boomers who my father worked for the same company for 35 years. You don't see that anymore. But they were like, you get a job, you start at the bottom, you keep your head down, you do your work, you get paid nothing, and you thank them at the end of the day. That
was the mentality. I grew up with a very, very similar, like that traditional, you go to college to do one of 5 jobs that existed that you go to college for. And then you're going to do that job. And if you change employers once, whoa. Because I had come from a teacher's house, super structured, traditional, who then also like grandparents who worked for the same. And I graduated from high school in the late 90s. And so choosing my academic path was still heavily influenced by that culture at the time. And then the recession, technology, and the millennials flooding the workforce really started changing things.
And there's no right or wrong because we can learn from all the generations. But it's about how do we come together, and again, how is leadership and how are managers identifying what it is each person needs, and it really is a very unique experience.
Yes, coming together and creating an environment of understanding and empathy is a word I'd love to see more of in society. I think is it the core of all of this, because that transcends age, industry, generations, and all of the divides. Sure. And that part is, we could go crazy with that one. So now that we got to this point, I want you to tell everybody how they find you, because this is great stuff for leaders and employees who want to be leaders, really any of us who want that common ground of understanding and really good empathetic collaborative cultures. This is like really good stuff. So how does everybody out there find you and tap into this stuff?
Oh, thank you. This has been a phenomenal experience. I've really enjoyed this. I am on LinkedIn. It's simply Renee Marchak, Marchak. You can also find me. My website is www.levelupcareercoach.com. And my email is renee@levelupcareercoach.com.
So if you're watching here on LinkedIn, go click on over and follow her. If you're listening out in podcast land, come on over to LinkedIn and find us.
I have one more thing I'd like to put out there, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I am actually running a free webinar on July 23rd called Finding Your Love Language at Work. And it really does a deep dive into what we just talked about. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging, and you'll walk away with some pretty cool tools.
And I will be there. There you go. You get both of us again. And we need more people talking about this, because employee engagement isn't about like snacks and beer after work and ping pong, which for a long time it was. Yeah, I could wear a t-shirt, jeans, and flip-flops to work, and that's the kind of culture I want. It really is about trust and all of the things that trickle down from it, from meaningful work to growing the way we want to liking who we're surrounded by. We want to create places where people want to go and they feel good going. And these 11 drivers are a fantastic roadmap to that. So go find Renee, tap into this stuff, come see us on the 23rd and learn more about your work love language. And before we say goodbye to everybody, let's leave them with one more little pearl of wisdom. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay. Leaders.
If every leader out there in corporate America could improve just one thing on that list of engagement drivers, which one would you pick and why?
Trusted manager.
Yeah.
Because it starts and ends with your manager. It really does. The other ones are very important, but if you don't have a manager that is promoting you, that spotlight, and I don't mean promotion, but that is really in your corner and giving you the opportunity to exercise all of these engagement drivers, it's not going to work. So there should be an expectation in the overall culture that we have managers that are doing this.
Have your people's back and mean it.
Yeah.
That's what trust looks like in a team. Mm-hmm. Everybody out there, download Renee's 11 drivers, go over to her profile on LinkedIn and find them. You go back and listen and take notes. I took notes through this whole podcast, everyone. Pick one and start. Just start. Whether you're a leader or whether you are an employee who has the opportunity to influence culture, maybe by liking your colleagues a little bit more. I'm going to challenge you to think about one thing you could bring to the workplace that would make you and those around you a little happier. And if you are so bold, tag Renee and I, or send us a message and let us know what you chose and what you did and the difference it makes, because we want to hear from you and how this stuff actually changes engagement at work. So Renee Marchak, thank you so much for being on No More Mondays. This was a fantastic conversation with really, really great practical advice.
Thank you so much.
Super fun. Always a good time on a Monday morning. I am Angie Callan, and this has been another edition of No More Mondays podcast. Again, big thanks to Renee Marchak for reminding us how important engagement is, and that it isn't just an initiative or a checkbox. It's really an invitation to build a workplace where people want to go and want to contribute. And that could change the world one workplace at a time. We're bold. We think big around here. Are you creating a place like that? I'll see you next week for another episode of No More Mondays podcast.